Scott, I want to welcome you to the show. It's good to see you, and I've known you and Tony for a long time, and at Queen City Angels. And Cincinnati has a special place in my heart because I attended University of Cincinnati, and in fact, some of the experiences I had there with the cooperative work study program were absolutely critical in the career direction I took. My first job was as a kind of an apprentice computer programmer many years ago at NCR, but that had a very significant impact in the direction I took. So, as I said, Cincinnati is a great place. The university is a wonderful experience for me, and I'm delighted to have you here. And I'll start by saying, if you can give us an overview of the startup ecosystem in Cincinnati, it'll get us started.
Well, thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate you having me on your show. The Cincinnati ecosystem, I think, is very robust. I think what we found over the last 15 years in particular is that really for an ecosystem to be very robust, you have to have the corporations involved in one way, shape, or form. And we had McKinsey come in and do a study on our local ecosystem probably 15 years ago, 13 years ago. And they said, one of the problems that Cincinnati was faced with is we have an abundance of Fortune 500 companies here in Cincinnati, and they were not heavily involved in the local entrepreneurial ecosystem. And lo and behold, probably 7 or 8 years later, we did the same study with McKinsey, and they said, hey, the large corporations are not heavily involved in the ecosystem. Nothing can really change. And a lot of that's changed over the last 5 years. There was an organization that was started up as a cooperative with Kroger and P&G called Centrifuge. They created a fund of funds, a syndicate fund, and that's helped to jumpstart the ecosystem. We've seen numerous accelerators get started here, urban accelerators, more lifestyle-oriented accelerators, women accelerators. So, and the universities are all have strong entrepreneurial programs in this region. So there's a lot of activity and a lot of interest in this space, but I think a lot of work to do still. Mm-hmm. And I think Cincinnati has always suffered from being understated. For a long time, people around here in Cincinnati would say, we're the best kept secret in the country. Well, I'm a marketing guy. You can't be a best kept secret in today's high profile world. So I think that there are great opportunities here. It is a very easy place to navigate. You can get virtually anywhere within 20 minutes or half an hour. The cost of housing here is fantastic. It's just amazing. And there's the opportunities with the large corporations where they're really getting involved in the space more and more now. They're looking in the venture space. They're looking at how to be a little bit more entrepreneurial. We've been doing programs at Queen City Angels with Procter & Gamble for a few years now. And, a large corporation like that, you wouldn't think that they would have a whole lot of interest in the entrepreneurial space. But, you think about the large corporations, they've got to be entrepreneurial these days too. I take a look at what Kroger has done with the COVID crisis is absolutely fantastic. I mean, you weren't able to just drive to a store and pick up groceries before what's happened here in our current environment. Kroger really accelerated what they needed to do in order to accommodate, sort of the digital consumer world.
That's interesting. So you have the bigger corporations, they being Kroger, a very large grocery chain, as well as the big P&G, Procter & Gamble, and a number of other mid-sized, moderate-sized public corporations who leverage what you guys are doing to develop the entrepreneur ecosystem.
Yeah, we've done programs with, like with Procter & Gamble. We've actually gone and done sort of an Angel 101 session with their executives, so they can understand what angel investing is all about and what our perspective is. We are looking at potential deal flow from them because they're seeing early stage ideas. And in some cases, there may be an opportunity where we can take a look at it where it's not approaching a venture capital term in terms of financing. And we may be able to provide a little funding for those types of companies and get them ready to where they can get larger rounds of capital and be kind of ready to be able to operate with a global corporation. And I think that's one of the challenges in our ecosystem, quite frankly. And I don't think this is uncommon with other cities, is there's a large gap between big and small. So, when an entrepreneur says, "Gosh, I really want to do work with Procter and Gamble," they'll say, "Well, you're ready to serve us on a global basis," and guess what? As a startup, you're probably not going to be ready to do that. So, well, I think what we're trying to do in this ecosystem is how do we fill that gap so that a entrepreneur can get a chance to do work with a big co and then work their way into it and not be overwhelmed and not be crushed by the fact they have to be global or multinational.
So at the Queen City Angels now, you guys have been around a long time, and Tony Shipley's one of the founders there, and I've heard Tony speak about this, but you guys are very early in the configuration of your organization as a fund. Is that correct?
Well, we're on our sixth fund now, and when we first got started, and how angel groups are formed and how they operate, we were founded as a network when we first got started, and there were 5 angel investors that got got Queen City Angels off the ground, and then we grew to 19. I think we grew probably like a lot of new angel groups do, and but our first 5 funds, we were fortunate enough that the state of Ohio was a co-investor with us, which was good and bad, because it was good in the fact that we had leverage from the state money, but we were limited by only being able to invest in companies that were located in the state of Ohio. Our sixth fund now, which is targeted to be a $10 to $12 million fund, does not have state money in it, and we can get deal flow from anywhere in the country. And as you mentioned, Tony's been around for a long time. Queen City Angels has been around for a long time. We feel that we've been fortunate to build up a pretty decent reputation. We've got a pretty expansive network. So we're getting deal flow from everywhere.
So it's a fund, everybody contributes some money, then the membership votes to do the investment or not do the investment at a certain level. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've got a really nice process that we use in our deal flow. When an entrepreneur is interested in seeking out funding from us, they fill out a pre-screening questionnaire off of our website. I'm the first set of eyes to see those deals. If they meet minimum requirements, then I ask them to formally apply for funding off of our investor platform. Many people know of Gust. We use Proceeder, and based on that information, we determine whether or not we want the company to go into a screening meeting. We're pretty generous with our time with entrepreneurs. When we screen a company, we give them an hour and 15 minutes. Give them plenty of time to talk about what they're working on. Not really enough time to do a demo, or a deeper dive that you would see in due diligence, but we give them a pretty good opportunity to tell us what they're up to. And then based on that, we invite companies to come in and present to QCA at our investor meetings. We have investor meetings every 3 weeks. It's the members that are doing the due diligence, and our members that are investors in our fund are voting members of that fund. And it's those folks that ultimately vote on the deals as to whether or not we're going to approve the deal for an investment.
All entrepreneurs want to know this following question. What should I do to pave the way? Should I get an introduction to that committee, or should I just go through the normal process, submit? They don't know me. I come in, I present to them over some period of time, maybe it's a week to 2 weeks, and then they make a decision. Is there anything I can do to enhance my chances or opportunity to get a connection with them?
The best way for entrepreneurs, I think, to get engaged is to reach out to the executive director. And that's my job.
That's you. Okay.
My job is, how can I do the matchmaking so that I can find QCA members that have relevant expertise, that I can match them up with entrepreneurs and get them prepped to get into our system. And we're going to talk about this, I think, but that's one of the things that we did early in our history. We created an entrepreneur bootcamp, a 2-day program that talks about everything that an entrepreneur needs to know from an angel investor perspective on their deal in order to become investable. Everything from front-end innovation to how do you leverage intellectual property, how do you pitch angels. I got to pay a royalty to my predecessor every time I mention the View from the Heavens session that we do at the boot camp, what angel investors are looking for. And so we want to do everything we can to help entrepreneurs win.
Well,
and I think reach out to the executive director and network and find angel investors out there. And I try to assign where I can of members of our group that will take the entrepreneurs under their wing and help coach them and get them ready to be able to come into our system.
Very good. Well, I want to go into a little bit about this, what you do in the boot camp and how it operates under Startup University.
Back to what I had mentioned earlier, when entrepreneurs would come to Queen City Angels, they weren't able to make a legitimate pitch. And we feel it's our obligation to help the entrepreneur at every stage. So one of the things I didn't mention is that when we set up a screening meeting for an entrepreneur, we send them a PowerPoint deck that outlines all the content they should cover when they come into the screening meeting. 10 slides, no more than 20 minutes of presentation, 30-point type. Here's what your content should be on those 10 slides. And we want to make sure that the entrepreneurs have every chance to win. So that's why we started the boot camp. And in the early days, as you can imagine, back then, people were writing business plans. And we still advocate that you write a business plan, but the boot camp isn't designed to help you figure out how to write a business plan. Now it's more, how do you take that business plan and come up with an executive summary? How do you come up with a proper pitch? How do you do an elevator pitch? What's your value proposition? What's your go-to-market strategy? Early on, we covered topics that have evolved over the years. We've done sessions on the lean startup. We've done sessions on design thinking. We've got a global expert that's speaking at the boot camp next week on systematic inventive thinking. And there are only about 9 universities in the world that advocate that process. There are only 3 in the United States, and one of them is based at the University of Cincinnati. So Drew Boyd is going to speak on that topic. And it's not often that you're going to have a speaker like that that's a multiple thousands per dollar a day consultant with corporations on this innovation process that you're going to hear at a boot camp. We do 12 sessions over 2 days. The first session is, do you even have a product or service? So, if you take a look at CB Insights, they track failures, startup failures, and the number one reason for startup failure, and I'll throw it back to you, Jim. What do you think is the number one reason?
Run out of cash or inappropriate product fit or market fit, one of those 3.
Well, you're very expert. You've been around for a while. So product market fit's the number one reason. Yeah. So she rifles through, hey, what do you do to determine whether or not anybody's ever had this idea before? How do you do the research? How do you determine whether or not there's even a need for your product or service in the marketplace? How do you do that early research? The third session is, well, if you think you have a need in the marketplace, how are you going to develop the product? And then we do some other sessions on how do you use growth hacking? How do you use social media in your startup?
Yeah, you've almost sold me to get on a plane and come to your next boot camp. I'm telling you, the social marketing, for all of us, a little older generation here, frankly, I was a marketing major of all things in college too. And it is so completely and radically different. And it evolves so fast. Of course, you've got the big social media engines, and you've got the blogs, and you've got the podcasts like this, right? And you've got video.
We were actually looking at doing a Twitter ad campaign, and QCA. I think we were kind of dinosaurs in terms of marketing. We get members through referrals, and we get deal flow sources that come to us. But we've looked at LinkedIn ads, and I looked at a Twitter ad campaign. I'm a marketing major as well, Jim. Okay. So I love that kind of stuff, and I think it's fascinating how some of those kind of marketing platforms can be used.
Yeah, fascinating. It's amazing. Let me ask you: is there a demographic profile of the type of entrepreneur who does well in your ecosystem? I might say mid-30s, has spent 8 to 10 years in the industry, has achieved some level of success and recognition in the industry. They've developed an expertise. They have a product idea and a market idea that'll fit.
Well, I think what we're looking for first and foremost is coachability for the entrepreneur. That once an entrepreneur takes their startup and they launch it, they're going to run into challenges, right? And how well are they going to be able to adapt to that? And how well are they going to leverage their advisors and listen to the advice and be coached so that they can adapt quickly? So I think that's the biggest thing that we look for. And that's a characteristic that you can find or not find in all people, right? It doesn't matter age, ethnicity, culture, whatever. The growing trend for entrepreneurs, the demographic is over 40 and probably even over 50. And I think the reason for that is those folks tend to have subject matter expertise. They've spent many years in a particular vertical or working at a particular job, or they understand a certain technology well enough that they're at a point in which they can go out and launch a company. And they probably have the personal financial means that they can put their own money into the deal, which is something that we look for, right? Because we want to make sure that the entrepreneurs have some of their own skin in the game. And I think those are the types of entrepreneurs that we're looking for. But we're really looking for entrepreneurs that understand what they're going to be up against, because it's going to be a tough road. Do they have the endurance? Do they have the stamina to be able to overcome those dark nights and the challenges that they're going to face, and they're going to see it all the way through? Yeah. We started a program, a monthly technology speaker program that we call eKickstart. And I bring in entrepreneurs that come in and they just talk about their journey. One of the speakers that we had at eKickstart a few years ago came in and he talked about the top reasons why his startup failed. And I thought, well, that was so incredibly brave on his part. It gave me goosebumps when we were listening to him. And he mentioned, sort of along the lines of what you're just saying, as a CEO, he didn't pull the trigger fast enough when he had employees that were underperforming. And so you have to understand, as a CEO, you're going to be charged with the responsibility of making those tough decisions. And in some cases, you're going to have those critical conversations. And sometimes you're going to have to get rid of dead weight. And you're going to have to do it sooner rather than later, because ultimately you may actually hurt your corporate culture if you don't do that.
Well, let me touch a little bit. What kind of members do you look for to join QCA, or do you have more people in the waiting line than you can handle right now, or are you always bringing in new investors?
We're always bringing in new investors. I think primarily what we look for are people that have an intellectual curiosity. They like to learn about new things. Business fundamentals apply to every business, whether it's a medical device or it's a SaaS platform or whatever it may be. And if you've got a new member that's got a corporate background, they probably have great business experience, and they can quickly understand the business fundamentals that a startup may have. But intellectual curiosity, I think, sort of a service mentality. They want to give back. I think that they want to spend time with entrepreneurs and help them. So I think it's a service and sort of philanthropic sort of characteristic that we look for. And they have to have risk tolerance, right? Because there are going to be a lot of losses in this space. I think the empirical data says that about half of your deals are out of 10 of them are going to go south. And so you're going to have to be able to stomach some losses, and you're going to have to be patient. But we look at people who want to learn. And I think that's primarily, in addition to what we've done with entrepreneurs, we did angel investor boot camps from the very beginning. Houston, who went on to be pretty well known.
John Houston, you're saying?
National.
John Houston.
John Houston went through one of our angel investor boot
Really?
camps, and that was the genesis for his starting OTAF. And OTAF is the Ohio Tech Angel Fund, located just 2 hours up the road here in Ohio from Cincinnati. And we started a program a couple of years ago, Jim, that we call Ascent, an Ascent membership, much smaller financial investment, aggregated into a special purpose LLC that invests in our fund. But then we wrap around 6 to 8 training sessions with those members to teach them everything about angel investing, terminology, term sheets, valuation, due diligence. And so we've already seen that becomes a farm system for our regular members. And we've already seen 7 of those people graduate to becoming regular full member.
After hearing you, and I've known you over the years, you are the best kept secret. I got to admit that. And maybe we can help raise
thank
your
you.
profile.
That's very generous.
No, you really are, because I talk to a lot of different groups and the angel investors throughout the country. And this is a remarkably deep and sophisticated program you have. And
I would tell people that if there's interest in the boot camp, the website's always up and running. Website address is www.qcabootcamp.com. There's registration off of that boot camp. And our website's www.qca.com.
Okay, so QCA Bootcamp, one word.com, correct? And
yes.
then QCA.com for your Queen City Angels website. Scott, you've been absolutely outstanding. I love the content. I love the energy and what you're doing, and your ability to explain it's been phenomenal. So I want to thank you for your time on the podcast.
You're a great friend to QCA. You've been a great supporter of the angel investor community for many years. Thank you for all your service on the board of the Angel Capital Association over the years. You've been doing this podcast for a long time. It's a great program, and thanks for all that you do. And we miss you here in Cincinnati.
Well, I do have to get back there. There's some people have said you come on back. The Alumni Association has been reaching out. So last thing is, if people want to contact you directly, do you have an email? And, if they're some entrepreneur, go ahead and give us that.
Jacobs, SJACOBS at QCA.com. And or call me on my cell phone. I'm always accessible, 513-373-6972.
Wow, you're very generous.
Love to chat with you. If we can't help you, we'll try to find somebody who can.